Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our talk show Late Night with Stephanie. I'm the host, Stephanie Salis. Today we have invited Melissa and Kiara from The Organized Mess. Thank you for coming.
Hello.
So without further ado, let's jump to our case study for today, the story behind Sgt. Pepper from the Beatles. Well, Beatles were an English rock band formed in Liverpool. The group comprised John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, are regarded as the most influential band of all time. So in case you never heard of the Beatles and you are wondering why, here are some background story about them. Instead of sticking with the trend of classical traditional pop music, Beatles have differentiated the others by creating music style in an innovative ways. First, we brought out one of the themes for today, creativity. Regardless of the risk of being disliked, they kept exploring a new music style during their career path. And by 1967, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band have been released. Eventually, it becomes one of the most famous albums in the music history. People even call it the song of the generation. Nevertheless, the reason why they were able to put all of the music ideas into a greater complexity, creativity was not the only one who deserved all the credit. Expertise is the second theme for today. Despite the music background they have, the team was so supportive and passionate in what they are doing. The production of Sgt. Pepper have taken the band 700 hours to record, and most of the time they spent on practicing. It turns out so great, it leads to Beatles to be recognized by the music industry. Overall, the Beatles have shown us a good example of combination of creativity and expertise. Okay, after telling more the case we are going to talk about, I would like to introduce our research question. How did the Beatles achieve creative success in music history? I see the creative success is chosen as the dependent variable. Kiara, can you start explaining the model of the case?
Yes, of course. So we choose to take creative success as our dependent variable. And when looking at the case, it's based and explained as a creative process. In the case, they stated they were able to work with criticism and conflict in the creativity enhancing way because they were focused on the creative process. And they also stated they became each other's main rival and emerged creative power. This is the creative power they became one of the most popular bands in history. Our argument will be further explained with the academic literature. So when looking at creativity, it can be associated with willingness to express novel ideas. And a study of Simonton in 1999 stated that the creative success is best identified with the introduction of the creative product into the wider culture, and that musicians in this case will rarely be considered creative until society as a whole and other creative people particularly recognize and use their work. This fully applies to the case of the Beatles, since they are considered as successful because this album became one of the most famous albums in music history through the love of their public and their fellow musicians, as was also stated in the definition.
That makes it very clear. Can you tell us more about the relationship between the creative environment and the creative success?
Yes, of course. So as we could already see, creative success is about the creative product, and in this case, the album, that is introduced and recognized as loved by the public and their fellow musicians. And to create a successful album, an important independent variable is added, then that is creative environment, because the creative environment positively leads to creative success. As research from Haydrove in 2020 argued that success will be high when there is a creative environment. By creative environment, I mean the physical, social, and cultural environment in which creative activities occurs. So in fact, they stated that they were super influenced by the Summer of Love area and each had their own expertise. And as Simonton in 1999 found out, indeed, the diversity and openness to the social and environmental are two characteristics of an environment where the creativity is flourished. As you can see, there were different experts in the team. So different researchers indicate that this creativity supports environment. And wait, that's not. Different researchers indicate that this creative and supportive environment stimulate the learning and motivation of the creative behavior. Also, as explained in the case, the Fab4 were able to work with criticism and the conflict in a creativity enhancing way. And this also is about psychological safety, which means that you can really be yourself within the team. And Patricia Riddle said that a team level of psychological safety is essential to collaborate with the creative process.
This is indeed a very logical relationship. It's interesting to see how this works in practice. So now moving on to the next relationship Can you tell us more about the relationship between creative success and expertise?
Yes, definitely. So let's now move on to the mediator expertise. A study of Buck found out that the creative success is higher when there are experts in the team. And Barley and Kunda describes experts as someone who holds particular information about a specific topic and who should be deferred to in its interpretation. In the model, you can see that expertise positively leads to creative success. And we choose to add expertise to the model because the Beatles are considered as experts in making music. And looking at the academic literature, our argument will be confirmed. So first of all, let's tackle one assumption. Creativity is often associated with the outside the lines, while expertise is representing those lines. However, experts are not only focusing on sharing their knowledge, but they are also experts in the complexity of this knowledge and creative association between the different components. So since experts know all the ins and outs, can generate new ideas, they judge the new values of the new ideas, and promoting the continuous improvement and implementation of those ideas. So I'm looking then at a team level. These experts are not always the most creative people in the team, but they can lead to creativity in the right direction. So we now explained the first part of the relationship, and I would now give the word to Mylise to further explain this relationship in the model.
Thank you, Kiara, for sharing your knowledge and to further explain the relationship with this case. So, Melise, how did they gather expertise? It doesn't come out of the blue, does it?
No, you're absolutely right, Stephanie. Expertise is really something you work for, and that's what the Beatles did. For example, we know that the Beatles were all accomplished and passionate musicians who had played and write music and lyrics on their own and together for a while. Plus, they spent 2 years playing in a Hamburg nightclub all night long, day after day. There, they had to improve, to try harder, to compose with a foreign audience. They did covers and they amplified their song track, and many obstacles and challenges were overcome during this period. And this is gathering and building expertise. This is what explained that they became experts, that they were so good at performing and writing tunes, and to be even more precise, this is called deliberate practice. Deliberate practice can be defined like so: a set of effortful activities designed to optimize improvement rather than enjoyment, and it's often performed without immediate reward. In addition, it's important to highlight that this link between expertise and deliberate practice is not something I just made up. Some prominent experts in the domain of expertise, like Erickson, for example, proved with empirical study that the amount of deliberate practice one does is actually the major determinant of expertise.
Wow, these findings are very insightful. Thank you, Melise. I see there that deliberate practice is fostered by grit. What does that mean?
So, yes, you're right, Stephanie. And indeed, it's important to point out that the Beatles engaged in deliberate practice because they were gritty. Grit is a passion and perseverance for long-term goals, according to psychologist Duckworth, a specialist of grit. And indeed, she pointed out that deliberate practice mediated the prediction of final performance by the personality trait of grit, suggesting that perseverance and passion for long-term goals enable people to persist with practice. And in our case, it makes sense. The Beatles were desperate to succeed. They dreamed of being famous stars since high school. They pushed each other for dreaming big, persevere, and never give up. And this perseverance is what pushed them into deliberate practice and turned them into experts after this.
So there's definitely the ins and outs of the Beatles' creative success, right?
Well, it's our interpretation, but some disagreement exists between researchers, in particular about deliberate practice. Indeed, Erickson, who raised awareness about deliberate practice, advocates that because deliberate practice is effortful and engaged towards improvements, it's never pleasant or enjoyable to perform it. But some authors pointed out building expertise is not essentially a burden, it can be enjoyable. For them, the theory of flow, which is a state of complete concentration where things feel effortless and enjoyable, can lead to expertise. For them, the theory of flow, which is a state of complete concentration where things feel effortless and enjoyable, can lead to expertise. However, at the moment, most of the literature about expertise massively considers that deliberate practice is the real factor of expertise, and flow theories are indeed outnumbered, and the existence of flow for experts is questioned because expertise really requires thinking of everything you do, correcting the tiniest details, and hence expertise requires deliberate practice. Eventually, we can also nuance the relationship between deliberate practice and expertise with the importance of rest. Indeed, people who go to the top of their fields don't just practice deliberately and persistently, they also rest strategically. High performance requires more sleep and break because when we sleep, our brain consolidates what we've learned. If you deliberately practice too much without resting, you might arrive exhausted and you might never become an expert. So, deliberate practice shouldn't be about pushing yourself to your last breath. That's why Professor Carter advocates for rest to always be considered as a moderator of the deliberate practice to expertise relationship in order to truly reflect the reality. But it seems that this relationship is often overlooked in the literature about deliberate practice and in our culture in general, which is really, really sad. And so, yeah, now that we have clarified why the Beatles encounter creative success and specified our model, maybe Stephanie, you want to give a try and explain the characteristic of the context?
Okay, no doubt they are team level. The outcome and whether people will like it is unpredictable, so it's a low value environment indeed. Finally, low stake because they are young at the time and still got a lot of opportunities. Kiara, so is there some alternative variables that were not added in the model yet?
Yes, there are two variables that we did not add, one independent variable and one moderator. So we have the independent variable intrinsic motivation that we did not add. And that is because it's interesting, engaging, and positively challenging. But this is also associated with grit that is already added in the model. And then as the moderator, we have competition. And in this case, they are actually talking about a friendly competition. And research of Kuhn actually indicated that participants of a competition, they have the opportunity to think outside of the box and also have creativity in their problem solving. And since it is, of course, a part of their success from the Beatles, but it's not like really a big part, we did not add it to the model to still keep it understandable. So we have now explained our model. Stephanie, can you think of some implications for the variables?
Definitely. Your creative environment, grit, deliberate practice are not a given, it is a malleable. Here are three actionable implications that can apply to them. First, for the creative environment, just like what Beatles have done, change the studio into a creative playground, which means that it is an unconventional workplace. For example, make it feels like home so you feel comfortable and play a lot of instruments and something fun to play with. Second, many studies show that having a coach while deliberate practice can effectively improve the quality of it because they can point out your mistakes and influence your practice plan. Last, for grit, try to provide yourself a solid purpose and hope, a good reasoning of why you're doing this, and believe in yourself that you're able to become better and constant improving, which can foster your grit. Here's the model for today's case. So is there anything we still can explore further in the future study?
Yes, definitely. So now we applied the model to the case of the musicians, and it would be really interesting to see if for further research, if this model could also be applied on another context. So for example, sports or a business success.
Yeah, exactly. And in addition, we could also highlight that sometimes people encounter creative success without wanting to or without being greedy about it. Hence, one could ask, how can we explain that some people are considered successful artists but never intended to be? And how does creative success is fostered in this case? This is a new field of research that should really be explored according to us.
Exactly. Thank you, Melissa and Kiara, for giving us an insightful model and the key variables to foster creative success. Thank you for watching and see you guys next time. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.